Remember when we swam in the ocean?
All right, guys and gals, this is happening, so bear with me. I don't know what it is. I thought it was allergies, and then I thought it was a cold, but honestly, it's okay in some places and it's terrible in others, so I have no idea what's happening. But today's book is The Girls in the Garden by Lisa Jewell. This is a book I have been trying to read nigh on 5 or 6 years, and I just couldn't do it. I did not have the time. I don't have the luxury of sitting and reading a book anymore unless it's something really short. I gotten into Lisa Jewell quite a few years ago, and so this one I found on my sister's bookshelf. It's about time I put it back. But I've started this book 2 times, I believe. I was like, I'm done. Obviously this book is not meant to be. I wasn't impressed with my prior attempts. Who knows what my headspace is, but I was on Libby and I was trying to find Sarah Dessen books to listen to, and you'd think that Libby would have an abundance of Sarah Dessen audiobooks. It does not. But then I started Googling other authors. Lisa Jewell popped up with quite a few audiobooks, including this one. I am pleased to report I liked it. The ending let me down, but it was a lot more interesting than I'd remembered it being. The premise is this family, a woman named Claire and her preteen daughters, Pip and Grace, move into this community space. I personally don't understand it because she is an English author, and it's something about the way that their communities are set up. My initial thought, especially given this cover, which looks to me like the cover of a house, is that it's just a bunch of houses and they surround a private garden yard, 3 acres worth. So it's a very large play area. But I guess, I don't know, maybe some people live in houses. Maybe these houses over time have been transformed into apartments, and then it can be any type of income, from very low income to government funded housing to very wealthy people. I still don't quite understand how this community works, or even how this garden works, because it seems like there's community space, which is quite large, and then at some point there's a separate rose garden. I can't tell you what the structure looks like because I simply cannot wrap my head around it, being an American. Their father turns out to be schizophrenic, and he has burned down their home thinking that he is saving the world. He's off at a psych hospital and they have moved into this community. Honestly, I was a little confused as to certain aspects because when they first show up, first off, this took me a second. I didn't realize how close Pip and Grace were in age. When the book starts, Grace is 12 and Pip is 11. Then Pip turns 12 a couple weeks before Grace turns 13. And so they kept, the girls are large. The father is very tall, very big man, whereas the mother is a very petite, kind of pixie-like person. I honestly don't even know what to think of these girls. Are they attractive or are they not? They're almost described as kind of ogreish, hulking, they're very big girls. They do not look their age. Every time they're described as oh yeah, she's 12, and then they're oh, but she's 12, and I was like, wait a minute. I thought she was 12. So yeah, turns out these girls are very close in age. When they arrive in this community, they automatically, we have a couple narrative perspectives. There's Pip, there's Claire, there's Adele, who is the mother of the sisters. I think there's 1 or 2 others that get sprinkled in, but aren't prevalent. When we first get there, we see there's a hierarchy of the children in this community, in this garden. The main kids in this one group that Pip and Grace end up joining, there's a girl named Tyler who is 13. The Howes sisters, there's 4 of them. Fawn, Willow, Kit Kat? Please tell me that's a nickname. It might be, and I missed it. I think there's another one. Jewell is a great writer. I quite enjoy her. She's very similar to Kate Morton and to JoJo Moyes. But one thing I really cannot stand is idiosyncrasies. Especially in this novel, they're not always explained. Actually, to round out the group, there's this guy named Dylan, this other little kid named Max. He kind of tags along, but he's younger than everybody, and he really just wants to be able to play soccer. Maybe there's like one or two that drift in or out. Back to the idiosyncrasies. I think it's Fern. Fern, 13 or so, I believe. Maybe she's the oldest. No, I think Kit Kat's the oldest. But Fern is old enough to not need this little scrap of silk that apparently she likes to brush underneath her nose all the time. I don't know the purpose of it. Honestly, there were so many sisters that they were pretty useless. We didn't need all of them because they didn't all serve a purpose, but they are homeschooled. And Adele, and then there's her husband Leo, and then his father Griffin, I believe, Gregory, I don't know, it doesn't matter. This was Leo's childhood home. He grew up in this garden. There's a subplot that goes along with him. His dad is something of a pedophile. He at some point moved on, like wife died. He left, married a woman in Africa and has been living there. Adele does not like him. They ended up being able to buy out Leo's brother's Patrick so that they could live in this home. I guess the grandfather still owns his share. I don't know. It doesn't matter. This home is supposed to be very nice. They're supposed to be relatively affluent, I think. But Adele, no offense, this is just my personal stance on things. She's a Fruit Loop. She's very homeopathic. She refuses to let her girls to go to school, which I'm not arguing homeschooling at all, but her purpose in not letting them go to school is essentially because she doesn't like the influence that they would be under at school. She started homeschooling because one of the girls came home crying because she got in trouble for running on the playground. I don't understand. There's a lot that's not explained, and maybe these are just cultural differences that I can't understand. One by one, all of these girls just start homeschooling. Early on in the novel, Adele, she's trying to defend herself to the reader. She states that her sister, she feels the same way I am, that she's a Fruit Loop and her kids are going to be Fruit Loops. And she's like, well, how are they going to meet other kids? How are they going to learn to be social? Like, they're going to be so insulated. And of course, Adele's like, but we have this park. We have this garden. In some respects, she's not wrong. Except it doesn't seem like the girls actually interact with many people outside of Dylan and Tyler. This does play into the end result, which I'm okay with. This idea of what it means to be insulated is very interesting to me. It definitely has drawbacks, but Tyler is the leader and she's something of a bully. Her mother is Cecilia, and Cecilia also grew up in this community. She is about 5 years younger than Leo. She had a sister named Phoebe who is a couple years older than her. Phoebe has a bench dedicated towards her because she had died when she was like 14 or 15. This is around the time like she had just finished dating Leo, and now Cecilia, who's 13 and Leo's like 18, is dating him. It just seems like a really unhealthy situation, and this starts playing into the plot of the book because there's another character who's an elderly woman and she wrote a memoir, and Adele, who is something of an editor, has been reading and editing this memoir. In many ways, Jewell is throwing a lot of red herrings at us. What I will say, what disappointed me most about the ending was I thought that Phoebe's death was going to be an underlying subplot that tied into the main plot, and we were going to learn who killed her. There's aspersions cast on Leo, there's aspersions cast on his dad, but we never know who kills her, and that is highly disappointing. I think in the end, slight spoiler, we're supposed to believe that maybe Cecilia killed her out of jealousy or something, or like out of ownership of Leo. Their whole relationship, there is no clear-cut answer as to the depth of it. Because in the memoir, the woman is like, oh my gosh, Cecilia was head over heels for him and this and the other. And then Adele goes to him and she's like, why did you never tell me that you dated Cecilia? And he's like, I dated Cecilia. That's right. So it's like, is he lying? Is he not lying? So I liked the back and forth, but it never resolved into anything. And then Cecilia is like, oh, that was nothing. Nothing happened. But it seems like something may have happened, but we don't know. Back to the beginning. This was a very quick book. I was actually surprised when I got to the midpoint, and then just the second half of the novel went really quickly. So the first half is the family moving in. Actually, the very beginning, I don't know how many of you are part of the writing community, but writers are discouraged from prologues for many reasons, largely because these prologues can be fit into the novel at another point in a very natural way. These prologues are somewhat redundant. They just slow things down. This prologue, I was actually okay with, and we know I'm the biggest critic of them all. And I think why I liked it was it set the tone. There is this giant garden party, kind of a block party kind of situation. And Pip is trying to find Grace and she can't find her. She talks to all the kids. They just give her different excuses, or like they give her different possibilities as to where Grace is, or like where she hasn't been. And then she finds Grace at the top of this hill, and it looks like she has been molested. She is in a coma, and then we fade to black, and then we enter the scene as the family's actually moving. I liked the tone it set because then we learn about Phoebe. Grace is 13 when she gets into this sort of trouble, when she has her accident. Phoebe is 14. So are they connected? Which is why it was such a bummer when nothing came of Phoebe's death. I don't understand why Jewell put it in there when it was, for all intents and purposes, meaningless. There was no mirroring. It was just supposition that in the end was misleading us from the actual culprit. They do assimilate into this group, but Tyler first comes over and is bullying them because she's like, what's your name? And so Pip is like, my name is Pip. And she's like, Pip? What kind of name is that? Is that your real name? Grace comes to the rescue and she says, that's actually short for Pipsqueak. That's what we've called her since she was a kid. Her real name is Lola. Tyler says, well, why don't you just call yourself Lola? They're like, well, we had this thing with our neighbor and our neighbor's dog, and so now that's what we associate the name with. And she's like, but you don't live there anymore, so why don't you start calling yourself Lola? Tyler's a good antagonist. I'm not gonna lie about that, but she kind of got annoying. She would just come at people and they would never stand up to her. Anyways, the girls have assimilated. Dylan has entered the picture. He's also 13 and he's a hunka burning love. Pipsqueak, or Pip, thinks he's just cool. Like, you know, she loves that he includes her because she doesn't really like this group of girls, but that's all she has. So she's on the outside and she likes when he includes her because it's a lot more enjoyable of an atmosphere. But it turns out that he and Grace have the feels for each other. Initially, the question is, well, what does he have going on with Tyler? Because they're exceptionally close, they're very touchy-feely. It looks a lot like they are together, where it turns out they've just known each other since diapers. But if we've learned anything from our couple of encounters with Tyler, is that you don't mess with Tyler, and you'd think it's a bad idea to encroach upon her territory with Dylan, whether it's romantic or not. Personally, I would have liked to have seen more of that with Tyler. I couldn't tell if her behavior was because she wished Tyler liked her, or if it's because Tyler's her best friend. In the end, a lot of these answers do come to light, but in the lead up, I thought Tyler just needed a little bit more explanation. I wanted to understand her better. All that's going on, we're learning about how Adele is not happy to have her father-in-law come back. He's a slob, very slovenly. He eats what he shouldn't, he says what he shouldn't, he behaves in a way he shouldn't. Now, because he has diabetes, he's going to lose a foot. The first explanation is, well, he went to the doctors in Africa and he didn't like what they had to say, which was, you're gonna lose your foot. So he came to England thinking they would give him a different answer, and they did not. So he's now at the house for a month or two as he has his foot amputated, gets his prosthetic, and then learns to use the prosthetic. I liked the not really knowing his guilt or innocence in past or present events. But again, it felt like Jewell couldn't quite decide where she wanted to land. And so she would flit from person to person in terms of who we want to suspect, which in essence is fine. I like that. But she didn't stay with them long enough to develop that. She would just then move on, which in many respects was fine. I liked the way she would leave us on a cliffhanger. But then she never really came back to it. She started the cycle all over again. Pip then befriends that older woman who is writing the memoir, and this woman has a massive rabbit. She starts walking the rabbit. She kind of pumps this woman for information, and this is a woman who tells her about Phoebe and all of that. This first half is quite nice in that we're getting the background. We are getting that buildup of how are things related, what is sinister, what is not, who do we like, who do we not like. Claire is petrified of her husband. Pip continues to write letters to him, and if anything that annoys me, it's the way that in British novels, they're always like, kiss, 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 kiss. You know, like the X's and the O's. They just do like 8 million X's. When you look at it, you kind of glance over it, but when you have to listen to it, it's like, holy cow, that's enough kisses already. She's been writing to her dad with the knowledge that he may never respond back, that he may never even get her letters, only for at one point it is her birthday and he does leave some birthday gifts on the doorstep, to which Claire, not exactly happy about that. What I don't understand is, I get that she does not want him to know where they live. She's afraid. But why does he not want her to know where he lands up? Which, to pose a question, Tyler confronts Grace and Pip of their dad because her mother read something in the newspaper, saw something, anyways, put these pieces together that this woman with 2 children in the same general age as the family in this article about the dad burning the house down. I'm like, lady, do you know how many people there are in the world that can have 2 daughters who are of similar age? Grace completely lies about everything, and she tells them that their dad is dead. Dell is like, hey, Leo, I really want to know the truth. Is it any of her business? No. But Claire then reveals to Leo the entire story. Why are we telling Leo, who you barely know, all of your dark, dirty secrets? In the midst of all this, we're sort of getting this romantic vibe. This is on top of these like little moments where we aren't trusting Leo. Pip sees him in a relatively inappropriate situation with Tyler, and then we hear about this 5-year age gap relationship he has with Cecilia. We also learn that he had slept with Phoebe when she was only like 14 years old. Now we're seeing that he might cheat on his wife with their new neighbor. She is trying to figure out who her husband could have gone to stay with because his brother and his mother live in Sweden, so he's not going to go there. There's really no other option. And they come down to this young woman. Her husband was a documentarian. A couple years prior, he had worked with a teenage girl. I thought she was older than that, and maybe I'm still misunderstanding, but this young woman, inappropriately young, was in love with him, and she told him, of which he and Claire had a big laugh. How in the world, 5 years later, she thought that he might be going to stay with this girl? I don't know. For me, that would be a blip on the radar. How has she played into their life that he would run to her after his schizophrenic break? Well, she's right. She's able to track this girl down at her house. The girl is leaving. She's like 26 now, so she must not have been a teenager, unless I have my timeline wrong. Claire hears his voice. She sees bits of him, and she's like, there he is. Now she's like, I need to tell Leo. I'm like, why? What is your obsession with this guy? We have all of this lead up, and then we have the party. We have the adults getting drunk. We have the kids doing their thing. Grace and Pip apparently cannot keep track of their phones. They never answer Claire when she calls, and she seems to be a little bit of a smother. I don't know if they're doing it on purpose or they're not, but both of them had left their phones somewhere. They don't answer when she calls. Pip comes home. The mother is absolutely drunk, and this is, actually the prologue. And so now the aftermath is the police are involved, and the police are doing an investigation. Meanwhile, Adele is doing her own investigation. Pip had found Grace without her apparel appropriately covering her. She covers her. Grace goes to the hospital. She has trauma, head trauma, facial trauma. They do blood work, and it turns out that she had drugs and alcohol in her system. We're building this into just a more sinister plot. The police are asking around. They get nothing, and they keep coming back to Adele saying, we can't get a hold of Cecilia. Both she and Leo are like, you're never gonna get a hold of Cecilia because Cecilia is a drunk single mother who doesn't take care of her own kid. And during this time, Tyler goes from this almost OCD in the way that she takes care of herself and presents herself to somebody who never bathes and could care less about her appearance. As the police are trying to do what they're doing, Adele is following up with people. She finds Dylan about freaking time. Dylan and Grace are dating. Grace was apparently on this hill waiting for Dylan. So why have we not gotten Dylan's perspective before? She talks to her girls, and her girls are less than informative. She talks to Tyler, and she's like, oh, Tyler's just a messed up kid whose mother won't take care of her. In the end, Adele discovers the truth. When Grace wakes up, so there was no inappropriateness that had happened to her. There was some guy stuff in her mouth because apparently she had done some mature things to Dylan for her birthday, which was like the same day as this block party. So like little things that are omitted, which I didn't mind. As a preteen slash young teenager, I would have been like, I don't really want to tell you that I had Tyler steal champagne to give to Grace for her birthday, and that she went on me in an elevator. I understand why there are things that are not being discussed, but at the same time, why was it so easy for Adele to get this information? Grace eventually wakes up. Wow, that was kind of quick. She claims to know nothing, so I was like, I guess it was quick for a reason, because she's not going to give anybody information on anything. All she knows, because they're trying to figure out how she got these drugs and alcohol in her system. Alcohol turns out to be the champagne that Dylan bought, and then the drugs we still don't know, because initially it looks like she tried to commit on herself. Claire's like, she would never do that. Like, she has no reason to do that. When the police come to Adele's house, as I said, she's homeopathic. Like, she does not deal with aches and pains with traditional medicine. She does it with her sticks or whatever that is, and cleansing the house and herbal remedies. But then she remembers her father-in-law because she tells the police, she's like, we 100% do not have pills in this house of any sort. And then she remembers her father-in-law's surgery. So she goes to him and she says, hey, did you have trouble sleeping? Because these are sleeping pills that were found in Grace's system. She's like, did you have trouble sleeping before, during, after this surgery? It's like, yeah. And she's like, do you have any pills left? And of course she's like, oh, look at you, fruity tooty, wanting some actual pills. He goes to get them. Then he comes back and he's like, they're gone. Like, I have 2 left when I had half a bottle yesterday. She's like, I know exactly where the drugs came from. I just don't know who gave them to Grace. And we still don't know how that was given to Grace. There is a moment where someone says, oh yeah, I saw Dylan come back with a water bottle that he didn't have before. Do we explore the water bottle? We absolutely do not. I'm just gonna cut to the chase here. Tyler is the one who did it. And here's me in the midst of all this Phoebe stuff. I'm thinking, okay, so the grandfather's a pedophile. He, or Leo, probably killed Phoebe. And then he fathered Tyler because he likes to touch young girls. In actuality, and this is why Tyler had started to let herself go, her mother, in a drunken state, revealed to her who her dad was, and he was like a deadbeat nobody who just got out of prison. She had been devastated because when she was younger, she caught Leo and her mother kissing. And so she just was like, that's my dad, and these girls are my sisters. Because Cecilia was an absentee parent, she essentially grew up with these girls and was parented by their parents. Only for her mother to be like, no, that's not your dad. This guy's your dad. She loses him as her father, and then she's starting to lose Dylan to Grace. Grace was traumatized by what her dad did as well. She didn't want to have anything to do with him. She glommed on to Leo, which again is looking like a problematic relationship. And it turns out that he's just a great guy who maybe doesn't understand boundaries once girls hit a certain age. So she's out in the garden, she's waiting for Dylan. Leo comes by walking his dog, which I was like, he pops up in a lot of places with that dog just for it to turn out to be nothing. She all of a sudden has this urge to hug him and thank him. Tyler sees this. Claire had, in her drunken state, had been like, oh, Leo's gonna be your new dad. And I'm like, you said this in front of his wife? I know you were drunk, but like, you said this in front of his wife? Even though Tyler knew that bit of information was just a bunch of crap, she saw Grace as getting what she was losing. She had gone to her mother. She goes, I don't like Grace. These are all the things she's doing. What do I do? And her mother, in a drunken state, was like, give her what she deserves. Which is when I ultimately start to conclude that she killed her own sister, because maybe she felt threatened in terms of Phoebe and Leo being together, or like perhaps Phoebe stealing Leo away or getting him back. There was so much there that we didn't hit. It could have done so much for this novel. What she does is, well, first, she goes around because she sees what Grace does to Dylan. And she goes around the entire garden telling everybody what she saw and what she thought of Grace. Bullying at its finest, because then all these house girls band together to support Tyler. And this is when we come back to that beginning about that insulation, in which Adele thought this community would be great for her daughters. But when they form a relationship like this, they're gonna form that pack. And that pack mentality is going to be, I'm going to back this person up. I'm not going to reveal their secrets. So these girls know things that they will not reveal because their allegiance is to Tyler. I still couldn't understand why we had these girls. Why did we have Fern? Why did we have Kit Kat? Which we like nothing about Kit Kat. And Willow was just weird. And she was really bossy and nobody actually liked her. Which, on a side note, Tyler actually liked Pip. She couldn't stand Grace, obviously, but She liked Pip because Pip wasn't a problem. Pip was just there. She had, at one point, Willow, Fern, somebody had taken some of the grandfather's pills, and they had taken one, they'd given one to Tyler, and those girls just get all happy in the garden. Tyler remembers these pills. She steals however much, and then she uses their computer to Google how to inject someone with a syringe or something like that, how to fill a syringe, something along the lines of, I need to use this syringe to inject it into somebody else. Like, she crushed up the pills, she mixed it with water, some liquid. She steals the pills. She steals a syringe because these are what were used for the grandfather. And she goes to the garden, and this is the one thing that the police kind of get, but they can't get anywhere with it, is they realize that somebody was in that garden with Grace. They were sneaking around because they didn't want to get caught on the CCTV. And they're like, it's a girl with a blonde ponytail. And Pip has already asked around and realized a lot of these stories, a lot of these alibis are incorrect. The girls are like, oh, well, yeah, Tyler has a blonde ponytail, but it can't be Tyler because Tyler's supposed to be with you, right? And I'm like, I think all these house girls are blonde too. It could have been any of them, but we're not casting aspersions on any of these girls. Tyler had injected Grace with the drugs. She had humiliated her with the intent of giving her what she deserves. I don't remember if she got interrupted before she could finish, but the end result is she didn't think she actually gave Grace what she deserved. Adele learns all of this. Grace, when she wakes up, doesn't want to pursue it. So then Claire and her husband get back together. I don't know. I understand her reservations regarding him and his behavior. That's broken trust. But she is dead set against being in his presence, about him having anything to do with her and the girls, with him knowing anywhere about their whereabouts. And then she sees him with the girl Roxy, who is hosting him, and she invites him to the hospital, and then all of a sudden everything's okay. Anyways, they've gotten back together, and because Grace doesn't want to pursue any of this, they end up just going straight to another place to live rather than ever returning to the garden. A year or something, 6 months later, Adele and the girls, including Tyler, are at this place. I think it's a museum, but there's a river there, so it's explained. It just didn't register with me. And she runs into Claire. Claire apologizes for the way she'd behaved when they'd all been drinking. She seems to be in a really good state. Adele then tells her that Tyler essentially lives with them now, and that she is homeschooling Tyler and basically fostering this really unhealthy environment. She, to herself, is acknowledging the fact that she had all the answers and then chose not to disclose them. She chose to let Tyler get away with what she did. Adele asks about Dylan, and Claire's like, yeah, they're still together. They're like that off-chance high school young love romance. And Adele, who loved this kid like a son, her kids grew up with him. He was part of their family in certain respects. She's like, yeah, haven't even seen him since the incident. What? This ending felt like a throwaway. I liked that essentially the message is we're not going to get all of our answers, but I'm just saying that whole Phoebe thing had me going. I was like, this is the meat and potatoes of the matter, and we completely disregarded it. The fact that Tyler got no comeuppance, that she got away, not literally, but with murder, it's like they're condoning her behavior and they're perpetuating the cycle. It bothered me, but at the same time, I kind of like that it was a different kind of ending. I think it was really the fact that we faded to black just to then cut to a significant period of time later to wrap things up. It could have been done a little bit more naturally, and that we, instead of affirming that this is what happened in the end, we're led to believe this is the trajectory of how things are gonna go, and we leave it open-ended. Honestly, I would love to have a sequel that's a prequel. Something that explores the Phoebe thing. We left on a discordant note, and so even though this mystery was solved, dun dun dun, there's still a bad guy out there. I don't know. I do recommend The Girls in the Garden, especially because I didn't think I would, and it moved really well, and it was very interesting. At no point did I say, I'm gonna skip. But at the same time, there were some aspects that were just not the strongest. So there we go. I made it through without blowing my nose. That's probably because I opened a window, and I have found that fresh air has been better for me than whatever's circulating. I hope I'm better by tomorrow because I don't want this to be my day at work. Bye.